I really need to cut my bangs. They are like literally all over the place and I can't see a thing. So I have been reading 1984 and I have reached page number 82. I have been literally taking notes and I have a lot to yap about. So one of the most interesting part for me would be how psychological this book is, and I believe Brave New World was written before this book. So I think these two are actually quite a good pair because I've heard so much about 1984 and how the control is outside. Then I heard people describing Brave New World about the internalized control that is induced by the controlling power for sure, but then people willingly give power or their control to other people. I could be wrong about it, but I feel like these two books are actually complementary in nature. Here I'm going to focus more on 1984. I won't be really able to get to this book right away. Anyway, so let's talk about the psychology so far. So when we start this book, we see how colorless and emotionless Winston's society is, where we see this huge poster of this guy, the big brother, with the huge letters saying, Big Brother is watching you. And they have this instrument called telescreen in their rooms where they use telescreen to. I'm getting distracted. Hello, wait, hello. He looks like an old man.
Okay, back to business.
Alright, where was I? So they have these instruments called telescreen which they use to keep an eye on their citizens and also to hear them, and obviously they can only listen to a certain degree of sound and you can avoid them from a blind spot. It's very ironic how they have electricity for this telescreen thing but not for lift. They're trying to conserve energy for their heat, wake or whatever. So what effect these things have is that they create an they create a panopticon effect. Panopticon is an architectural model for a prison which was given by Jeremy Bentham. It is structured in a way so that one guard could, for example, imagine a circle and in the center we have the guard. So this one guard will be able to observe all the prisoners without them being able to know when they are being watched. The constant surveillance leads to people self-regulate themselves and conform to the expected behavior. And the mere possibility of being watched, even if it's not true, creates this internalized control people have on themselves because people start to be self-disciplined and they adhere to the social norms or rules. The state of conscious and permanent visibility assures the automatic function of power. And the most interesting thing would be the small things or the small elements of this world. For example, we have thought police for thought crime. Obviously, it will lead to people not even try to think about anything against the Big Brother party. And we can see this throughout the book how Winston is feeling like that. He has admitted how the thought crime itself means death. So they may already know what he's thinking about, how he doesn't like the party. This constant fear will obviously lead to people be more anxious and try not to think about anything negative about the power. And then we also have doublethink, which is believing in two contradictory ideas. And it may seem like cognitive dissonance, but it's not. It's, forcing people to accept contradicting beliefs, further controlling their perceptions and beliefs like, how war is peace. So it basically creates this idea that, whatever good thing we have is actually bad or the bad thing is good. That's basically what doublethink is doing. Winston was able to find this diary which he starts writing in, and he and you can see how he's struggling with his own thoughts. He has to fake his expression all the time. Doesn't really has the personal time to actually keep a facial expression which is natural to him. While writing, he got reminded why exactly he decided to write. So it was because of this daily ritual that people are doing, which is called 2 minute hate. And here what we see is that we see people coming together and the party will show their common enemy. What they're basically doing is creating this scapegoat for all the misfortunes that has happened due to their irresponsibility. It is often easy to blame someone else for our own misery than take accountability for ourselves, whether it's the state, whether it's a person. I think it's a very human tendency to do that. And here we see a man is being hated. It is being said that this scapegoat, the character which was being hated on and during this 2 minute hate, resembled Leon Trotsky, who was the opponent of Stalin, but he was exiled and he was a fellow revolutionary. But he was constantly portrayed as the enemy of the Soviet state. The party needs someone that people can recognize and they need to condition them to hate him whenever they see him and also use him as the outlet to pour out all their frustration. Here, people can redirect their fear, anxiety, the resentment that they feel, the betrayal, and disgust. And what is exactly happening during this 2 minute hate is that Vincent noticed that he's unable to not join in the hate despite him being aware Goldstein is not the problem, but it's actually the party. But despite knowing that he's being manipulated, it doesn't mean that he can't be manipulated. So what we actually see here is the emotional contagion. So we actually catch feelings from the other person. If someone is laughing, we end up laughing too. And if someone is crying, we might do the same. And especially when we come together as a group, it becomes more easy to catch those feelings unconsciously. It is an evolved survival mechanism because our ancestors who synchronized with the group were more likely to survive. So our brain automatically mirrors emotions of people who are, screaming, clenching fists and showing rage. And there's also a tendency of antisocial behavior to come out, especially when you come into a group where law is not really playing a huge role in it. You actually are able to express the unacceptable parts of social behavior. The other thing that takes place is de-individuation, which is when we get so absorbed in the crowd where our sense of individual self lessens And here our mind follows what other people are doing. Our mind becomes less reflective but more impulsive. People may do what they may not do on their own. The other factor could be normative social influence. It's a psychological phenomenon where people conform to the expectations and behaviors of a group to fit in and to be liked or to avoid rejection or punishment. And here we can see that refusing to participate in this is dangerous. One facial expression at a wrong time could mean death or disappearance, as Winston describes. So, obviously, the participation becomes automatic, and he has to participate in this, even though he thinks that this is not true, his and then his actual frustration kind of starts pouring out, which is not against Goldston, but it's against the party itself. And this 2 minute hate speech is also creating group identity, the us versus them mentality. So they see the scapegoat as the monster, the enemy, while the Big Brother party is trying to protect them as the savior or the hero. Obviously, Winston is also facing a huge cognitive dissonance during this time where he knows the truth, but he is being repetitively fed propaganda, and yet he has to commit to actions which don't really align with his original thoughts, which is why, despite Winston being very much aware of what's going on, he still can't help being swept away. During this whole period, we can see how the space between private thought and public emotion is being erased. What one genuinely believes or feels and what they're expected to feel isn't really aligning, and they are training emotions instead of thoughts or opinions. And the most interesting part is that this book was written way before any psychological test or experiment was done on conformity, obedience, de-individuation, or social identity. And these are very important social psychology concepts. And now, there was a specific scene where he sees this young woman and he initially starts feeling very attracted towards her, but then suddenly his thoughts become very hostile, and it made me realize how emotionally this world is empty. So before I explain this weird hostility that Winston feels, I would like to talk about the emotionlessness of the society. So there's a huge absence of love and true affection in this book. First of all, we see that we have four ministries. One is for the truth, basically lies. One ministry is for peace, which is for war. And then there's a ministry of plenty, which oversees scarcity and keeps on lying to people's faces. And then we have ministry of love, and it was very interesting how Orwell described it as something which is frightening, and it made me wonder, why is it frightening? Why does it have so much of security around it? And Ministry of Love is supposed to be looking after the law and order, but the building is described as a building with no windows. There are barbed wires. We have machine guns, and then we have armed guards. Isn't that like the opposite of what we associate with love, which is, obviously openness and less guardedness? We see the doublethink playing a role here because authoritarian systems don't simply redefine words but redefine reality itself. If we can convince people that torture is love, or endless war is the peace, the language itself cannot protect the reality anymore. The words that we use become the tools of control and manipulation. We see how there's this absence of families, friendships, romance, and trust among people, because even if people are married, they have to get approval from the state, and if they have children, the children are made to be the spies for the state so that they can spy on the parents, which makes genuine affection difficult to grow, because how can you love your child when you know that this child can just even lie, you can get caught, and you can disappear. And it's not even the children's fault, because children are being molded in a way where they believe that what they're doing is the right, and they see these people, the party people, as some heroes or whatever, so they see them as role models. These children are being manipulated too, and children don't really have the ability to think in abstract ways like a lot of adults do. They actually grow into it. So children are very simple when they're young. There's this huge lack of genuine laughter, and even beauty for its own sake, because we see how colorless the world is, how grey it sounds, and everything becomes political, whether it's the relationship you have with your partner or whether you have with your children. There's no love in the sense that we would like. And the reason is that the party isn't only asking for obedience, it's asking for love. Basically, they want to become the most important entity or thing for every person, becoming the primary emotional relationship that people have, usually with other people, but the party wants to replace the significant other person. It is so suspicious of love, friendship, intimacy, and loyalty to family, because when you love someone, you become loyal. Because love is a strong reason enough why people will find courage to protect their loved ones, and you even become ready to sacrifice yourself for love. So, who gets to own our deepest emotions here? Because if our greatest love is our child, we may disobey the party. So they have this incentive to weaken the competing loyalties that people may have for their loved ones, which makes the world of 1984 absolutely emotionally starved. And here we can also see that intimacy or the practice is not forbidden, it's just disconnected. How intimacy is so lacking, like how children spy on their parents, how friendship are dangerous, because even the conversation is monitored, and someone who knows you very well, like a friend, they can rat you out. Is that correct? Rat you out? It reminds me of school. I once had this classmate complain to our classroom teacher about me using the word flirt to describe this guy, and obviously I knew what flirt meant, but I was just saying it as a joke, and we were like 14 or something, and my teacher just made it such a huge deal that the word flirt is so dirty that I should not be using it. Like, excuse me? I don't know why, but I got reminded of that because my teacher tried to humiliate me in front of the class, and she was like, "Do you know what you have done?" And I was very confused, and I asked, "What have I done?" I kept on asking, and she didn't even say it because the word flirt is such a bad word or such a dirty word. And she was a maths teacher. Like, come on, bro, teach maths. I don't know why, but this teacher kept on judging the character of girls for some reason, and it's so normal in Indian schools. And I don't know, they just have this tendency of trying to control girls, or like not even boys, honestly. It was usually girls who were being easily controlled, so that's what they did. But anyways, coming back to the point, humans naturally have emotional needs. We want love, we want intimacy, we want belonging, and we want trust and meaning. But the party has systematically blocked each one, so there's this huge vacuum because of that. The emotional energy that we want to express has to go somewhere. So it could go to worshipping the big brother, it could go to hatred of Goldstein and blaming him, or it could go to the loyalty to ideology, participation in the mass ritual of 2-minute hate. So the 2-minute hate is the emotional consequences of an emotionally starved society. And the Ministry of Love is not a place for openness. It has no transparency, no human warmth, as it only becomes the machinery of state power. Totalitarianism isn't just about controlling what people do, but also control where people direct their capacity of love. They monopolize the emotional life of human beings. And I was looking into these things. I was able to find this work called The Psychology of Mass, which was published in 1933 by Wilhelm Reich. He was an Austrian psychoanalyst, and a lot of people have assumed that George Orwell may have read his work and maybe has explored that aspect in his book. And in his work, he argued that authoritarian systems can benefit when personal emotional life is tightly controlled, because frustrated emotional energy can be redirected towards political loyalty and hostility to designated enemies. So Orwell could be exploring a similar psychological idea through Winston's experience, where authoritarianism is distorting the perception of reality. So now coming back to what Winston do when he sees Julia. The first thing that Winston feels is obviously the attraction towards Julia, but then it suddenly turns into very violent and hostile. The first assumption we have that he's frustrated because he cannot really act upon desire and express any sort of affection or attraction towards someone. Winston admits that he hated her because he wants her. It's paradoxical. The sexual desire has no healthy outlet because the party deliberately suppresses it. Instead of the desire disappearing, it becomes anger. It is the frustration aggression hypothesis, where aggression is the result of frustration, and frustration occurs when a person is blocked from achieving a certain goal or their fundamental desire. So, when the emotional desire is being blocked, the emotional energy reappears as hostility. And the most interesting part is that the party controls the sexual life of a certain class of people, while they don't really keep control of the other group, the proles. It is the majority of the citizens who are the working class. They don't really face the same amount of suppression or oppression that the other class of people do, and the reason is definitely because they look down on the working class and they don't really control the sexual part of their life. It's because they want the class to produce more laborers and continue their workforce. The party also weaponizes sexual repression. It's not discouraged because they're morally conservative, because you know how intimate relationship can lead to loyalty towards someone else other than the party. And the other thing is that Julia was wearing this specific symbol of the party, so she appears to be the ideal party member. She has this scarlet sash, which makes Winston see her as her embodying everything that he despises, which is the ideological purity, the unquestioning obedience of people, the rejection of pleasure or intimacy or love, the rejection of individuality. He's projecting all of his hatred of the party towards her onto one person, and we can see that during the 2 minute hate itself, Vincent is feeling intense emotions left and right as he keeps on shifting through these emotions. And it shows what happens when the political system is controlling our most basic instinct, and how this rage that they create during the 2 minute hate isn't really natural. It's just something that they have been enduring all this time. The emptiness, the frustration, the sorrow, the fear, these are all the emotional energy that they are redirecting as hatred. It's being poured out as outrage. The anger is manufactured by the party by denying people to have normal ways of life. So there's no love, there's no intimacy, there's no curiosity or even individuality in this world. So yeah, that's all for now. I have some more things to kind of talk about, but maybe I will do it later on. There's a huge role memory plays, and then there's this intense fragile insecurity that I feel is coming from the power, because they have to alter the history, they have to alter facts so that they can seem legitimate enough to keep being in power, and it's such a cowardly move. I mean, it's my personal opinion. I feel like honesty and genuineness is so important, and the party is, again, it may be this embodiment of a system, but it's also made of human beings, so it carries the human quality of insecurity and shallowness. Not exactly shallowness, but cowardliness. So anyways, that would be it for my for now, and I'll give you more updates after finishing part 1. Do I? The world of 1984 is completely colorless, empty, and emotionally starved. The world of 1984 is completely colorless, empty, and emotionally starved. I'm currently on page number 302 and I'm about to finish this book. I have hardly 34 pages left, I think. And it's kind of funny how whatever assumptions I made in the beginning of the book is kind of being worded out by Orwell, because I was talking about how there is no loyalty between people, but the party wants that loyalty. And yeah, it's happening. Someone is trying to get over social anxiety, I guess, because I'm literally on my rooftop and people usually come and go, and I'm filming here. But the sky is way too beautiful to not do it. It is just so beautiful outside today. Like, look at the sky, it's so pretty. I love it. I love the sky so much. Right now it's about to be 5 p.m. and the sun is hiding behind the clouds. Let me show you. Like this. So we are about to say goodbye to sun. Oh, my mom is going to ask me to bring the laundry. I need to run away. I was planning to give my updates after finishing part one, but I ended up finishing the whole book. And I think I've already covered most of the things which have intrigued me about this book psychologically. And here are my final thoughts. So I really enjoyed this book, and I don't think this book is exactly a future prediction with absolute accuracy or even a prophecy, but a warning to a lot of people. And I do think that a lot of people see it as a warning. It is frighteningly timeless because it understands human psychology so well. His portrayal of surveillance, propaganda, emotional contagion, memory manipulation, scapegoating, sexual repression, and torture was quite to the point, and it makes sense. Because the party doesn't simply control the actions of individuals, but also trying to reshape how they perceive reality itself. And I will be spoiling the ends, I think. So around the end, when Winston's eventual betrayal of Julia, when he's in room number 101 and he's being tortured by the thing that he's very much scared of, he says that don't do it to me, but to Julia. I don't think that betrayal is cowardness or, something that makes him lose his humanity. Because throughout this whole discussion, we see there are small moments of, for example, like nursery rhymes that he's trying to remember, seeing this prole woman singing and seeing how this woman has been the means of creation of the beauty of humanity itself, because she is not just creating human beings, but she's the reason that humanity will never disappear. And I think she becomes this embodiment of human life itself. And so whatever he does seems like this tragic consequences of unbearable psychological torture where self-preservation overrides everything else. So what I perceived is that he ends up believing that he can't be himself, he can't rebel because he betrayed her, where he sees self-preservation as just something selfish. And I don't really think that is true. During this whole time, Vincent believed that the party will never be able to control what he feels for Julia, the love, specifically the emotion of love or affection. They can never have that. But when he betrayed her, he felt that the love which he held on to has disappeared. So his humanity is not there anymore, which I don't really think that would be the case, because self-preservation itself could be love for life, because you want to survive, because you feel that you don't want to feel any pain. Why? What are you looking at? I don't know if that makes sense, but overall, I don't think that self-preservation is exactly a very selfish thing to do. I think it highlights how we still want to survive, how we still want to continue living in the world which may seem hopeless to us. George Orwell was able to capture how fragile an individual mind can become under absolute power. And however, I just found myself disagreeing with Orwell with the way he ended the story, because the ending seems to suggest that if power becomes absolute enough, it can ultimately remake human nature itself. I don't think history supports that claim. Wait, I need to get Cotton out of the room. He has to always do this whenever I'm trying to film. Yes, sir, you can get out. Thank you. It's the evening time, so he likes to roam around the house, and Well, he's the king of this house, so who's going to deny him the right? History kind of tells us how humanity has this remarkable capacity to regenerate and how civilizations have collapsed, languages have disappeared, the empires that used to stand very strong on the horizon of Earth have also fallen down. Wars have devastated generations, yet humanity continues to still love, create, and sing. Like the party can control what songs they're producing, like they can control the lyrics, they can control how to sing, but the urge of singing, the urge of creating, that they cannot control. They may force someone to sing just because, sing because I'm telling you to do that, but they cannot really control the willingness to do that. And I think they do try to control that urge too. But we also have this thing that we do, which is question and also eventually rebuild things. We have lost several civilizations, like the Indus Valley civilization, but we still are a civilization that is continuing to live. And even our time, even our era of democracy may get destroyed at some point. Who knows? But after all the trials, the errors, we have come across this point where we talk about democracy, where we talk about freedom of speech, of the idea of liberty. And we literally arrived at this position by questioning monarchies, religion, capitalism, communism, even colonialism, and even now we are questioning artificial intelligence and how it's becoming such a norm for us. And we are questioning whether we are actually whether we will be able to control it, whether it will be something that serves humanity, or whether it will go far ahead than humanity and suppress us. And there's a lot of debates around these things, and I absolutely support those debates because we are able to ask questions and find answers to it and find even better questions for them. So to me, the questioning itself is one of humanity's defining traits. Because if all memories were erased, I still believe that people would still observe contradictions. They will question things. They will ask why. They will search for truth and slowly reconstruct all the knowledge that we have built so far. Because I don't think we just merely inherit information, but inherit curiosity. And this curiosity is something that can be killed. For sure, at individual levels, a lot of people may have experienced that. They may have had their curiosity being broken down. They may have had experiences of their curiosity being absolutely destroyed. The joy, the play of curiosity, and the simple things could be destroyed, but has not vanished. And I just feel like I align a lot with Viktor Frankl and even Dostoevsky to a certain degree, which kind of makes me bring in these perspective for what Orwell is trying to write or what he's trying to express. Because Frankl asks like what remains possible even under immense situations of pressure or even under immense suffering. Dostoevsky believes that human beings are capable of profound moral renewal despite their contradictions. However, Orwell seems more willing to imagine that power permanently colonizes the human spirit by what I'm assuming from the ending I read. And I mean, it makes sense, the ending that he wrote for Winston. But I also do think that there was this hopeful element throughout the book that Orwell was slightly giving here and there. And that's what Winston believed in too, until his hope was being destroyed by the immense psychological and physical torture that he was facing. So it's very interesting to me because I understand why he wrote that kind of an ending, because it's coming from a perspective of a time where he has witnessed fascism, colonialism, Stalinism, and the aftermath of Second World Wars. I think we have a power cut, so there's no electricity. What do you call that thing? Inverter. So I have this light on. I would still want to finish talking because I don't care. And I still remain unconvinced that humanity itself can ultimately become what O'Brien envisions. Because what really moved me about 1984 wasn't the grand theories or practices done by the party, but the small, quiet moments. For example, the church bell Winston barely remembers, the nursery rhyme, the choral paperweight, and the prole woman singing while hanging the laundry. Because for me, I don't think those moments are just symbols of nostalgia. but the reminder that humanity will persist beneath every ideology. The party may destroy individuals, but it cannot invent humanity, and nor it can erase the impulse for love, to crave love, to create and to remember and to wonder about things forever. The electricity came back, and I usually shake my Coke or sodas up so that I can get rid of the soda, the carbonated stuff, and I can get the sweet. I learned this technique from my brother. This novel invites us to be vigilant against the authoritarian tendencies and not to encourage us to flatten every modern society into Big Brother. The challenge would be to distinguish legitimate concerns about power over simplistic comparison, because things are much more nuanced and complicated than we would like it to be, because we have to recognize that national security, state power, and freedom are more nuanced in real democracies than the fictional country that Orwell writes about. I don't think power can ever triumph over humanity. And this book strengthened my belief in human resilience, because power can manipulate memory and they can torture individuals and even rewrite history. But I don't really believe that it can ever extinguish the human capacity to keep questioning. And as long as people continue asking questions, imagining alternative, loving one another, and creating meaning, no ideology remains invincible forever. This book for me is a great psychological warning, and I think it becomes even more valuable when it's being read in conversation with hope rather than surrender to despair. So these are all of my thoughts on 1984. And now I'm very excited to see what my thoughts will be after reading Brave New World. And I'm going to read some other books before I read another classic. I hope you enjoyed watching. Thank you so much for watching until the end. It means a lot to me. Yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!